Hey everyone, welcome back to the Genus Brewing channel. So last week I decided to brew a beer with some leftover bits and pieces of hops that we had laying around at the shop here. The only thing is these leftover bits and pieces ended up adding up to well over 2 pounds of hops, and I put them all in a 5-gallon batch of beer. And that brings us here today to answer the question of, can you actually overhop a beer?
Well, let's find out.
So the brew day was pretty normal other than the ridiculous amounts of hops. I started out by doing a small mash for a session style pale ale, just right in our kettle like we've done in some other videos. And then after that I brought it up to a boil, did my 1-hour boil, and added a bittering addition, I guess you could call it, at like 6 minutes to the end of the boil, so not really a bittering addition. And then what I did is I took all of those hops and added them into a hop stand at somewhere around 160 degrees Fahrenheit, put the lid back on the kettle and let it sit for a good 45 minutes.
By leaving all the hops, or as many of the hops as possible, out of the boil itself, you're reducing the risk of getting that extra plant matter bite in a beer like this. And by doing what's basically a hop stand, you're hopefully drawing out as much of the aromatic and flavorful components without getting that plant matter bite, the chlorophyll flavor.
Yeah, so once I did that, I did run into a serious issue. So when I went to actually transfer the wort into a fermentation vessel, I realized that about half the kettle was full of hop tube from all these pelletized hops. So one way I dealt with that is I tried to strain off as much of it as I could. We've actually got a pretty large strainer here I was able to use in the shop, but it managed to fill that strainer right to the brim.
So you're definitely going to lose a lot of liquid volume by using so much hops, so that's going to effectively reduce your efficiency, but you know, if you're going for flavor, who really cares?
One of the issues I did run into was efficiency. Our efficiency was terrible on this batch. It was probably somewhere around 50%, and that's just something you're going to have to expect with really large amounts of hops. One thing I did use to actually buffer that loss of efficiency is a product called Brewers Crystals, which is a relatively flavorless and colorless product. However, it very, very closely matches the fermentability of natural wort. So once I did manage to get the beer transferred and topped off with a little bit of water to bring it up to our full volume, one of the things I noticed after a fairly regular fermentation was it had a pretty significant film on top of the bucket itself, and that we fermented it in, of course. And this film, turns out it's not an infection, so if you do this at home, don't worry about that. It's actually all of the hop oils coming out of solution and forming that film on the surface.
If you've ever done a hop tincture, which I personally do a lot because I like hop-infused vodkas, etc., you'll notice the same film forming around the outside of the bottle or whatever vessel you're doing the tincture in. It's just the oils being drawn out by alcohol and then sticking to the side.
So as for now, it's been just a little bit over a week is all, but the beer is completely fermented out because it had a pretty low gravity to start with. Mm-hmm. And as we popped the lid open to the bucket, we noticed the aroma was pretty darn ridiculous on it, and contrary to what everybody might expect, it's by no means bitter. Definitely has a lot of hop forward flavor.
It's a little bit bitter, but it's not excessively bitter.
What?
It's IPA bitter. You know, it's not
IPA. Yeah.
It's not more than you'd expect.
It definitely has a creaminess to it. It's very indicative of what I would pretty much fall in line right with the New England IPAs. So one of the things I have noticed though on this beer is that a lot of the hops that we had laying around are actually noble hops. And I feel like they come through, however, they don't necessarily detract from the beer. They almost give it a secondary level of flavor, realistically.
Yeah, you get a lot of balance on this in terms of having some of that grassy, earthy, maybe light hay and that noble hop lemoniness that you can sometimes get. But then you also get a good amount of some of the more floral and sweet, fruity kind of hop flavors as well. I think Belma, Galaxy both would have added that, and those were in there as well.
And those almost seem to finish on the palate, where more up front is going to be more that noble character. I think some of that is going to be the grassiness I guess, is just going to be indicative of the fact that you are using that much hops. But still, with that said, it's nothing that's going to overwhelm the beer. It's definitely not as if we just, threw in a half pound of Saaz in this beer. It definitely doesn't taste like that.
Yeah.
So thanks everyone for watching our video today. So to answer the question that we had at the beginning of the video, it seems like it's really hard, if not impossible, to overhop a beer based on how well this one turned out.
Overall, I think it comes down to how you use your hops. If you decided to put all 2.5 pounds in as a bittering addition, that might not go over so well. But
terrible.
Put it in as a hop stand, and apparently you'll be just fine.
If you want to support us, go to our Amazon page that we'll have below, or just come into our shop.
And if you have any questions on this video or other videos, please feel free to comment below or reach out to us via Facebook, which we will link in the description.
Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. Cheers.
Cheers. You think we should dry hop this?
Definitely.
In the future, I would say the same beer, if you could cool it down a little bit more first and then add for a shorter amount of time. I think the length of time, the 45-minute stand, is probably a little bit long. That's why the grassiness is still there.